So, I'm continuing my rewatch of DemonSlayer Season 1. I want to be primed and ready when Season 2 gets here. And there's a lot of stuff that caught my attention in Season 1, so now is the time to take a deeper look at these interesting things. Now's time to speculate about why those things might be there. And Episode 2 has something I can't wait to talk about, so let's get to it. For me, the most interesting thing in Episode 2 is the Tengu Mask. This is the mask Urokodaki wears, and Tanjiro refers to it as a goblin mask. And this isn't just a mask that exists in DemonSlayer, this is a traditional style of mask that's been around for a while. And it does have a striking appearance, and it works great as a visual for a story like this. There just might be a little more to it. And when a character's wearing a mask, I can't help but ask, why is that character doing so? And I'm not talking about the in-story reason the character's wearing a mask, but why the story's creator chose to put that mask on the character. And when any number of masks could be on that character, I get extra curious why this specific mask may have been chosen. And I believe sometimes there may even be subconscious reasons for a choice. Reasons the artist might not even recognize at the time for being a reason, but it just might be a reason nonetheless. So first, let's talk about the superficial stuff. The mask has this prominent, elongated nose. When I see that nose, I think about the sense of smell, or more specifically, Tanjiro's enhanced sense of smell. And this episode also shows us that Urukudaki has an extraordinary sense of smell. And having this most prominent feature of the mask be the nose, well, I think that causes me to immediately see the parallel between the fact that these two characters have this shared given trait. But it does it in like a subtle way, like it uses the power of suggestion just a bit. And it reinforces the idea without really hitting the viewer over the head with it. And because a mask hides things from our view, it makes me wonder what other things these two characters might have in common that Urukodaki's trying to hide from us. And there are a couple of scenes here when you watch the episode in which Urukodaki's talking, and you can see like the peripheral portions of his face. You can see those around the edge of the mask. And when we watch Urukodaki's actions and hear his thoughts, we get some glimpses into the real nature of Urukodaki that he just might want to keep hidden for some reason. And hiding your face, of course, is a basic function of a mask. A mask is a disguise. It's pretending to be something you're not. It's a type of deception. But this mask, or any mask of this style, it isn't the sort to fool somebody into thinking that the wearer is actually a Tengu, but more like a costume just to make us think of Tengu or to make us think of other things. So, what other kinds of masks do we see worn in DemonSlayer? And of course I mean figurative masks, not literal ones. Nezuko's always a good place to start, right? And her bamboo muzzle's almost like a mask. It goes over her face, and maybe it obscures what you could think of as her most obviously demonic feature, her teeth. And just like Urukodaki's mask isn't fooling anyone into believing he's actually a Tengu, I don't think any of us believe that the bamboo muzzle is the reason Nezuko doesn't eat people. Like, she could take that off at any time if she wanted to, couldn't she? Also, just like Urukodaki's face is kind of visible around the edge of the mask, we see the demon side of Nezuko slip around her muzzle in this episode. When she encounters the demon eating humans early in the episode, we can see her salivating, like we see her drool just kind of oozing from behind the bamboo, and we see it rolling down her chin. And we can really, on her face, visibly see the struggle to resist her demonic urges. So Nezuko's muzzle and Urukodaki's mask, well, they're both just outward displays of internal struggles. Now, the struggle for Nezuko's obvious. She's trying to hold on to memories of her humanity. She's trying to suppress her demonic instincts and urges. But what internal issue does Urokodaki's mask represent? I think he's presenting himself as hard and cruel and cold and uncaring. He criticizes Tanjiro for having kindness and empathy. Urokodaki's testing. It seems like maybe it's crueler and more difficult than it might need to be at first. It actually looks like he would prefer it if Tanjiro failed. And later in the season, we find out why he wanted Tanjiro to fail. But it's not for cruel or malicious reasons. It's because the last time he sent people to the DemonSlayer Corps, it went very poorly. He wants to spare Tanjiro the tragedy that his previous trainees suffered. So what appears to be cruel or harsh is actually an attempt at kindness. There used to be this old song that said you have to be cruel to be kind, or you gotta be cruel to be kind. And that's kind of what I think Urokodaki's doing here. Urokodaki's cold, harsh persona is a mask to cover his kind and caring true nature. But his mask isn't quite large enough to completely hide who he really is, either figuratively or literally. And also, the Tengu Mask is red, and red is the color associated with the sun in this story. Now, generally speaking, I personally associate like yellow with the sun, but that's not the case for everyone. The representation of the sun on Tanjiro's earrings, well, that happens to be red, and on flags in Japan, I believe a red circle represents the sun. And showing just how much the mask is a deception, I would expect a red mask to be worn by a flame Hashira. But Urokodaki, well, he was a water Hashira, showing that that mask of fire is hiding his true nature of water, just like harshness hides kindness. And I also believe the choice of a red mask links Urokodaki to the sun and fire. And this is a through line in Tanjiro's story that I explored in episode 1, talking about charcoal. Another clue to his association with the sun, I think, is that we don't see any snow around Urokodaki, even though in the previous episode there was a lot of snow in the landscape. And I know there's a geographical reason for it, but I think a storytelling reason may be that he is on some subconscious level linked to the sun, which is linked to Tanjiro and his father. So, though he's not biologically linked, I think spiritually and metaphorically, we can see Tanjiro and Urokodaki as family. I'm going to say the story gives us reasons to picture Urokodaki as Tanjiro's spiritual grandfather. To make this point, I have to share some things that I learned about Tengu masks, and by extension, Tengu in general. So Tengu are like legendary creatures. They're sometimes considered yokai, and in the Shinto belief system they can be considered kami, which are kind of like gods in Western mythology. And the classical Tengu mask, like the one Urokodaki wears, well, it represents a specific Tengu named Tsuruhiko Okami, who I'll refer to as Okami. According to what I read, and please, I'm in no way claiming to be an expert on these topics, so please forgive me for any misinterpretations of religion or philosophy. I mean nothing but respect in these matters. But I think Okami is widely considered a symbol of strength and guidance, and he's kind of like the Shinto equivalent of a patron saint of martial arts. So I can see why Urokodaki would choose to wear his mask. But I believe there's another aspect to Okami that is relevant, though probably beyond Urokodaki's conscious reasons for donning Okami's likeness. Okami is the Shinto monkey deity who sheds light on heaven and earth. Some experts theorize that Tsuruhiko Okami was a sun god who was later replaced by a different deity who now fills that role. So, Urokodaki wearing the face of a forgotten sun god suddenly just really drives home his importance in Tanjiro's life. Like with his father's close relationship with the sun god, which I talked about with that whole charcoal discussion in the previous video. Also, Okami married the kami of dance, and it was their offspring who invented the kagura. And later in Season 1, we will see Tanjiro's father perform the kagura in a memory or a flashback. The kagura of the fire god or the sun god. So we see Urokodaki wearing the sun god's face, and we see Tanjiro's father performing a kagura, a dance associated with the sun god's children. Knowing these things, you don't really have to connect too many dots to see Urokodaki as Tanjiro's spiritual grandfather. Of course, there are a lot of other metaphorical masks in this show, like many of the Hashira are not what they appear to be at first glance. Shinobu. She wears a mask of empathy for demons, though it is a type of empathy that gets expressed cruelly, because inside she really despises them and doesn't possess any empathy for them. But we find out that she wears this mask of empathy, or she pretends to be empathetic, or I won't even say she pretends to be, but she forces herself to be, to honor her sister. Because her sister was more empathetic in this regard than Shinobu is. And in fact, she kind of sees this as a burden she can let go of once she meets Tanjiro and she sees that Tanjiro possesses a true empathy that she's only wearing a mask of. And other Hashira, well, they come across as jerks to me when they're introduced. And then when I talk about, I think this Hashira is a jerk, people familiar with the manga, well, they keep telling me, hey, just wait and see. You're going to grow to love them. But one interesting thing, if we're talking about all the people who are wearing a mask and we see a character prominently wearing a mask, we also have to ask ourselves, who is not wearing a mask here? And the one character in DemonSlayer that I think is not wearing a mask in Season 1 at all is Tanjiro. I think with Tanjiro, he is being genuine. I think his empathy is real. I think his bravery is real. I think Tanjiro is the one person who shows us who he really is throughout the story, but of course he has to balance the fact that there is more than one part to his nature. Even some of the demons that we'll meet, it's not just the Hashira, some of the demons are wearing masks in their own way in Season 1. Like, we see their vicious, dangerous, and cruel present exteriors, but oftentimes we see they have sympathetic backstories, and we can understand that they were in a difficult situation before becoming a demon, and we almost empathize with that. I won't say almost, I think we're intended to fully empathize with some of the demons we see in this Season 1. So tell me, what do you think? Is the mask just something that looks cool, or is it something intended to have many layers of meaning? Even if it's not intended to have many layers of meaning, and we find these unintentional layers, do you think they're still valid? Also, what do you think is the most interesting thing about Episode 2? Or any Season 1 episode? I'd love to hear it, and I'm always looking for ideas. I really hope you enjoyed this brief talk about the most interesting thing to me in Episode 2 of Season 1. I look forward to reading your comments, and until next time, I'll see you later.